I think that we say that we're just dancers, but we're not just dancers, you're athletes. And when you go to a school setting and you're an athlete, then you should have services available just like any other athlete on the floor, whether you're playing basketball or football or whatever that may be. When you are doing those things, I think it's so important for you to have that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unchoreographed podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jenna Lower, and today I have a wonderful guest with me. She is the founder of Doctors for Dancers and extremely passionate about connecting dancers to the dance medicine community, and I just absolutely adore her. So please welcome Jennifer DePaola.
Thank you so much for having me today. I adore
I'm
you.
so excited.
I am so excited about this.
Awesome, awesome. Well, today we are going to have a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation. It's something that is near and dear to both of us. I think we've been in the trenches together.
Literally.
Yes, absolutely. In the world of conventions and competitions. And it's definitely something that needs to change. We need to see some improvements on that front. So we are definitely going to dive into that conversation. But before we do that, I would love if you could just give our listeners a little background on who you are and what Doctors for Dancers is.
Yeah. Well, my name is Jennifer DePaola, and I have been a dancer since I was 2 years old, just like the regular story that you hear. You know, you've been dancing your whole life. And I got injured at a very young age, around 14 years old. And unfortunately, I saw a lot of different specialists to try to get help that I needed. And unfortunately, I was one of those people that was told to stop dancing. Here are some pills. It's in your head. All the things that come with being injured and trying to see somebody that really doesn't understand the dance world. And not until I was in my 20s did I finally get my first MRI. And I was like, I knew it. Like I knew something was wrong with me this whole time, but unfortunately I couldn't find anybody that could help me. And so lo and behold, I was actually at a dance convention and there was a lady with a table and I just thought she was a massage therapist. Like we see a lot of those at the conventions, right? And I went up to her and I was just talking to her and she said, I'm a dance medicine specialist. And I was like, what is that? I've never heard of such a thing before in my life. And are there more of you? Because this is absolutely amazing. And that's where my love and my passion really grew right at that minute when I heard when I heard dance medicine. There's an actual thing for dancers out there like yourself, Dr. Lower. Like you are here to help the dancers. And that's when our biggest passion has been is just spreading the word that there are people like you that exist that can help our dance world. So we did this. We're pre-pandemic babies. We started in 2019. And we actually did an online workshop with you called Stop the Pop, which I thought was absolutely amazing. We're talking about the hips. And
That's
it's
a
so
long
important.
time ago now, wasn't
It was
it?
a long time ago. We're got to do another one coming up soon here.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. And so we have been on the road with dance conventions all across the country. We've hit over 50 cities. Personally, we were at 25 of them all across the country to see right on-site services with yourself over in Norfolk, Virginia. And that was just a fun time for us. So we've been on the road, just really just telling everybody that there are people out there that can help you and that understand you and understand our world. And so it always doesn't have to be stop dancing or you have to sit out. There are modifications. There are people that can help you get to where you need to be. Like we just got a phone call the other day from somebody who had seen two different types of specialists. They saw a chiropractor and a massage therapist, and they just still weren't feeling better. And they didn't see a dance medicine specialist. And so they have Nutcracker going on. We're right in the thick of the season. They have 4 shows coming up and they're like, I need help. What do I do? And luckily we have 2 people right in that area that we were able to refer them to so they can go ahead and get looked at. So
Yeah,
like
that's
moments
great.
like this, like it stinks that you have somebody that's hurting, but at the same time, it feels so good that you're able to connect them with somebody that can get them the help that they need.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I love your mission. I think it's an amazing organization. I am obviously very passionate about people knowing that dance medicine exists because I think, well, most dancers that I talk to have no idea still.
Still.
And we've been around for a while, but A lot of people just have no idea. And then all of a sudden they find you and they're like, how did I not know about this? Like, why did nobody tell me that this was a thing? And so getting the word out to studios and parents and doctors and all these different groups of people, I just think it's a really important mission. And I just love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I felt the same thing when I first found out about this. I almost felt gypped in a way because I'm like, you've been around for how long? And I
Hmm.
never knew that there was such a thing. So for us, it's just shouting it from the rooftops, like dance medicine is here. There are people here to help you. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're on that mission together. You know,
Yes,
you've been with us for
absolutely.
a long time now. I know it's
Uh-huh,
been
I know.
almost 5 years from the very beginning. It's
That's
crazy.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is I hope that the trend is moving in the right direction where more people are starting to understand that this is a thing. I've seen it in my local area where people finally, I've had my clinic now for 8 years, but it literally has taken 8 years to feel like people actually notice that, oh, wait, this is a thing. So it's kind of like this slow moving process, but I'm hopeful that like hopefully we're picking up momentum here and the word is getting out. I think, with organizations like Doctors for Dancers, we have IADMs, we have all these really great organizations. So yeah. And that's kind of the whole idea behind even the podcast was just like to get more knowledge out to the dancers that, hey, this is a thing that exists, right?
Yeah, the people that you've had on your podcast so far are amazing. And I feel like these are the people that are also having this momentum and this movement of trying to let dancers know that dance medicine is here.
Hmm.
So you've been having some amazing guests so far. I wish you good luck on
Yeah.
your path for your new podcast.
Thank you.
Because
Thank
it's so
you.
important for dancers to know that there is a resource out there for them. And there are lots of resources. We just need to tell you what they are. So
Right.
we even have a resource page on Doctors for Dancers that you can go to, and iAdams is on there, PAMA's on there. You can go ahead and see other resources that are available, not just us, but other people that are here in the community trying to make a difference.
Yeah. Oh, and I think it's important to mention too that it's all types of dance medicine specialists, right? Like obviously I'm a physical therapist, but you've got everything on there. Sports psychologists, massage therapists, Pilates instructors, like there's everything.
Yeah, yeah. We named it Doctors for Dancers, but we do have a variety of people, even Pilates and yoga and gyrotonics. It takes a whole team of people, I feel, to take care of dancers and at all different levels. So maybe you might need a doctor one day, but then maybe for your conditioning, you're doing Pilates and yoga and doing some cross training, maybe working with a personal trainer. And these personal trainers understand that maybe you're going on tour. Like, what does that look like for you?
Mhm.
So I think it's important. So they speak the language. Doctors for Dancers, we speak dance. So
Yes.
it's important to know that you can go ahead and see somebody that is able to help you achieve the goals that you want to and understand that world on where you're going.
Yeah. Instead of just slapping a boot on it and telling you not to dance anymore.
Let's not do that. If
Yeah.
you, right? I think that should be a message, a PSA. If somebody just slaps a boot on and says, don't dance for 4 to 6 weeks, that's when you need to get a second opinion right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you still hear that quite often?
All the time. I just evaled a dancer this week that had actually two. Evaled two different dancers in the past week. That was the scenario. Both in a boot for about four. One was in a boot for I think 4 weeks. One was in a boot for 5 weeks. One of the dancers had come in and out of it a couple times until she finally found me. So yeah, we hear it all the time. I think we need to educate the dance community, but we need to educate the doctors too, because I don't even think the doctors know that there's like specific people that can help. So yeah, it's pretty unfortunate.
So what do you do in that scenario when you're hearing that people are in a boot like for 4 to 6 weeks, and that's like the commonality of when someone does that? Because you think that that's just normal. I always saw
Mhm.
everybody in a boot. So if I wasn't in a boot, then I was like, well, why am I not wearing a boot? Because
Right.
it's so common.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think it's a delicate balance because you don't ever want the patient to feel like they shouldn't trust their doctor, and I think it's not that the doctor doesn't know what they're doing. Of course they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they maybe just don't have that same understanding of like what it takes, what the dance world looks like, and like why putting a boot on and then taking it off and just sending them back to point isn't necessarily the smartest idea. I mean, it seems like it should be like, well, of course. um, but I don't think that they really have that understanding. So that's exactly what happens is they tell them to take it off and then they go dance. So when I'm talking to a dancer, I try to be really careful about not like saying, hey, your doctor has no idea what they're doing. um, and I just explain like, boots have a time and a place for things. But like we're out of it now, and the only way that you are going to get back to dancing is to never put that boot back on. So, within reason, of course, if there's a fracture or whatever, then we have to take note of that. But if it's safe and everything is okay, structurally intact, teaching the dancer that it is safe and why it's safe and how to basically just gradually progress themselves out of it. And I always tell them, I'm like, you can go home and burn that thing now because we're done with it. Like, we're not going back to that boot. Yeah. So I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to make sure that we have lots of time to talk about this other elephant in the room, which is the reason that you're here to talk a little bit about the dance convention scene. Now, this is, again, like I said before, we've been in the trenches of this together. You guys have been touring around with all these different conventions, which I think is absolutely amazing. It's an amazing resource for these dancers to have. But kind of what we're seeing in the convention world, in the competition world, is not the most ideal environment. And again, I don't think dancers realize that it's not okay. So what are some of the things that you saw that sort of prompted you to want to go down that path of, being at the conventions and trying to change that whole environment?
It actually started off with my son. We were at a football game and I saw multiple tables down below on a freshman game in the middle of the week. And I saw that they had services available to them. And when you go to a dance concert, you don't see that type of scenario. And so one time I had asked, the vice principal was there, and I asked him, why don't you have this available for the dancers? And he said, to be honest, they never asked. And that was
Mm,
like a big light bulb moment for me, is like, oh wow, like we don't ask because we don't know that those services can be available to us. I think that we say that we're just dancers, but we're not just dancers, you are athletes. And when you go to a school setting and you're an athlete, then you should have services available just like any other athlete on the floor, whether you're playing basketball or football or table tennis or whatever that may be. When you are doing those things, I think it's so important for you to have that. So that was like my first thing of like, why do we not have these at dance conventions? Why do we
mm,
have a massage therapist, which is very well like needed, by the way, very needed. But why don't we have like emergency services? Why don't we have an athletic trainer? Why don't we have a PT on standby? Why don't we have a doctor? Because dancers are getting injured all the time. When we went to dance conventions, the first thing that we noticed is multiple teachers had their own kit, their own emergency kit. Like they are the first aid. They wear all the hats. And
yeah.
so for me, it was like we're out here by ourselves. We're out here on our own and we all are trying to take care of each other. That's a wonderful thing about our dance community, is that we all try to take care of each other even though we don't know each other, right? And
Yeah.
that's for me. Like, I just want to give a big hug to our dance community because it's hard at convention. The long hours, the lack of sleep, the lack of eating, it becomes a lot. And so where are those resources available to you? And so we were very busy. We
We
were
were
very
very busy that
we
weekend.
were very busy. As the day progresses, I mean, you're going through it. And so the moment that we first did it, I fell in love with wanting to be there for the dancers and so that they could have a resource to get help what they needed. I think that some of the things that we noticed a lot was dehydration. That was a big one. We saw that in every single city that we came about. So we had electrolytes on standby. So I feel like that's something that dancers can definitely put in their bag, is electrolytes, and make sure that you're drinking a lot of water. That's super, super important. Another thing that we noticed is maybe not eating as well either. Sometimes people didn't want to eat and then dance. Doesn't feel so good
Hmm.
slushing around sometimes. So sometimes people just would go without eating, or they didn't have time. Maybe they got picked to be in a piece, right? So now they don't have their lunch break. And so I think that would be helpful is just important planning. Even if you can call ahead to usually they're at hotels. So even just to call ahead, because sometimes you can't leave. It takes you 15 minutes just to get to the restaurant to come back, and your time is wasting. So I would even just call ahead to the hotel and bring in that order so that when you're ready and you're out of class, that you can just go ahead and pick up your food and you're ready to go, especially if you don't have
Hmm.
your parents there. I lots of times I've sent my boys off to convention and they're by themselves. So I'm on the phone calling up the hotel, making sure that they got their food ready.
I feel like that's an excellent tip because I was kind of shocked at how little the dancers were eating. And not only that, but like what they're eating. So they're like, well, I'm just gonna like eat some Chick-fil-A really fast. And like, well, of course you feel terrible after you dance eating that. You just ate all this like fried food and it's just hanging in your stomach.
Yeah.
So to be able to be prepared ahead of time and like know that you're gonna have something nutritious, I
Yeah.
think that's a really good tip for people.
That's a hard one because again, even so sometimes they're not eating breakfast either because they're going into from a long day of competing and then the next morning they're supposed to be at convention. And so sometimes you're just so tired that they're like, I'm
Yeah.
not eating, I'll eat at lunch break or I'll eat in between. So making sure that you're fueled in the morning. What does that look like for you? Planning ahead, knowing that I'm gonna have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So maybe you have to again call the hotel, have that room service ordered, whatever you need to have that DoorDash
Hmm.
ready, so that you're fueled for the day. Because we had a lot of people behind the booth who weren't eating and dehydrated and traveling. Lots of people are traveling all over the
Yeah.
thing. So you have all those components mixed in. Sometimes it doesn't end so well. So just trying to be prepared. We're hydrating yourself, getting enough sleep, trying to manage your meals when you can,
Hmm.
and making sure that it's not all sloshing around, but at least you have something in your body to go ahead and be able to do what you need to do for that day.
Yeah. You know what one of the things I always did, and I actually still do to this day anytime I travel, because like whenever you're in a hotel, I feel like getting breakfast is sometimes like especially if you're used to waking up and eating right away, it's like hard to get breakfast sometimes. And if you're waking up at 5 a.m. to dance right away. So I would bring oatmeal packets because you can find hot water everywhere and you
Yeah,
can add some protein powder to it and like it's like super filling and healthy.
that's
So
a great
I still
idea.
do that to this day. I always travel with oatmeal packets.
I'm gonna steal that one for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, like you can get there's always a coffee machine
Yeah.
in your room most of the time. You can go ahead and get hot water that way, or it's free to go down to the hotel and say, "Hey, can I have a cup of hot water?" and be
Yeah.
able to mix your own stuff in there. That's smart,
Easy, right?
right? Nice and easy, doesn't cost a
Yeah.
lot. Like, yeah,
Exactly. I know. You get a whole box of those things for like $3.
heck yeah. See, got the tips going.
Yeah. So, okay. So food is a big issue. Nutrition, or I'm sorry, nutrition, hydration. Um, as far as like sports injuries. So the types of like things we're seeing. So I obviously was there with you for one of the conventions. So I saw one city. Do you feel like you saw a lot of similar injuries in most of the cities, or were there like differences?
There were differences. Really depended on, I think, the studio as well.
Hmm.
If they had a sprung floor, we actually started
Mm,
adding to our list of things, asking people if they were dancing on a sprung floor or not.
love
So
it.
sometimes we would have a studio that did not have a sprung floor at a very advanced level, and all of a sudden we would have 6 to 8 kids in our area, and they were all from the same studio. And so we noticed that
Yeah.
trend with the sprung floor. So that was super important to recognize. A lot of them were pre-existing conditions. A lot of them weren't like, oh, this was my first time ever injuring myself. I noticed that a lot of times they were injured for quite some time, not just like last week. Sometimes they were, for 6 months, 9 months. Some people were just coming off of surgery, which was crazy. Some people were like, I'm like 3, 4 weeks in, and this is my first time dancing ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they would end up being with us because, dancers are pushing it. But yeah, I think that they had a voice that we noticed, that they actually were able to tell somebody, I'm not feeling good. And
Yeah.
that was a big deal. Yeah. And we were like kind of like the same thing of like learning that dance medicine exists. Like this was also their first time ever seeing something like this at a dance convention where we had a whole table, a whole booth set up. They could do compression therapy and
Mm.
massage guns for free. They could talk to Jenna for free. There was all these things of resources that they could be able to have lots of free education. And then if they wanted to go ahead and get worked on, then we were able to do that right then and there for them. And that was a really big moment, especially if they had competition that night, which we had multiple people coming in saying, I have comp
Yeah.
tonight. What do I do? So
Yeah.
um yeah, I think those were a lot of the injuries were different, but at the same time, they were around for a very long time.
Yeah, for sure. What a crazy thing too to think that like this is not a normal thing. That there isn't a booth or a table set up because for every other sport there is. You're
There
right. Like,
is.
seeing that at the football field, like that's normal in that world. There's
Yeah.
athletic trainers at every, even at the high school level, there's an athletic trainer for the team.
Yeah.
So to not have that, it's like blows my mind that that's like not a normal thing in the dance world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not. Not yet, at
It's not.
least.
Even somebody who works with us, her daughter is like really big in volleyball. And she was like, we have a big tent,
Yeah.
So she asked them, like, where is, and she goes, in every single game, there is a tent and it's available. And so I would really love to see that in the dance community is that we have a booth and we have a tent of credentialed people that are able to provide these kind of services to the dancers because they deserve it. They deserve
Hmm.
it 150% to be treated just like any other athlete. Um, the biggest moment, another moment that my son, when he got injured, I said, what did you do? And he said, I went to go tell the coach. And usually, like when we go tell our dance teacher that we're injured, usually we have to go sit out or maybe they can modify for us. And I said, what did your coach say? And he said, go see the trainer. Go see the trainer as a freshman football, like he had access to a trainer, and that
Hmm.
accessibility is huge because then he was able to go ahead and get wrapped up and fixed and get out right there. And that's what we as wants to do as dancers. We want to get fixed and wrapped up and get up back out there. Like we're dying
Yeah.
to get back out there. We hear that music and our body is moving. Like I'm missing out. That FOMO hits.
Yeah.
It's something in our blood that we want to get back out there too. And so I think, talking about the athleticism and how important it is that we treat our dancers like the athletes that they are.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's more normal, unfortunately, or more common that like a dancer tells their coach or somebody that they're injured and it's like kind of brushed off. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm injured too. Like we're all injured. Which is like such an unacceptable response. So I think kind of I love what you said about like being able to give the dancers a voice that like this is real, this is a problem, we're gonna fix it.
Yeah.
How empowering for them to like finally have somebody that's there to help.
Yeah, I think it's important for them to know that there are resources available for them and they don't have to live in silence through that pain because a lot
Mhm.
of dancers are living through it and pushing through it every single day. I hear dancers out in LA. I mean, they're crawling out of bed in the morning because they are hurting so bad and this is their livelihood. And it's like these injuries didn't just happen. They've been happening
Mhm.
for a long time and a lot of it is because they didn't know where to go. They didn't know who to
Yeah,
go to. So having doctors for dancers available and having this amazing community that we do across the country, which is now international, which I'm so excited about. Like
amazing.
we have dancers that can find that help that they need so that they can get back out there. I mean, we want to see that dancer on that stage. Like that is the goal. We understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to go back and touch on really quickly, because I think this is actually something that I talk to pretty much every dancer that I know is going to convention is the flooring.
Mm,
So you mentioned like asking about the sprung floors and stuff, and I don't think a lot of dancers like put two and two together of like why things hurt so much sometimes when they're dancing at convention. But you think about the surface, it's literally concrete with carpet laid on top of it.
yeah.
And so if they're going from a sprung floor to concrete or carpet,
Yeah.
so many injuries. Like I feel like I remember being there and seeing a lot of like stress type injuries in the foot and the ankle and the shin and all of that.
Yeah. It's very painful. Some people also don't think about the shoes that they're wearing.
Mm,
I've heard many, many stories of dancers where they're wearing shoes in class, and all of a sudden that it just sticks, and then the knee goes the other way because it's just so the friction is it's not moving. So I think that's something to also be wary of what kind of shoes are you wearing or not wearing.
yeah.
Um, we had a lot of first aid. We had a lot of blood because people are not wearing shoes. I'm
On
old
carpet,
school.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally old school where we danced in shoes back in the day. So that was a new thing for me is to see so many bruised and bloodied feet. So that was really tough. So be very careful about that, especially like on the edges. If they some conventions are going without floors and some people have them. So if you are dancing barefoot, please be careful on some of those wooden areas because you can we've seen it happen where you just slice right in the middle of that. So the flooring is so important on being careful on that. So make sure that you have some Band-Aids and some alcohol wipes in your bag. That should be in your dance bag. You should have a little first aid kit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point too about like thinking about what shoes. I don't even that's not something that I regularly ask them. So I'm gonna add that into my questions with my dancers to make sure that they're prepped with the right or options even of different shoes because they don't know what they're going to be dancing on until they get there. So I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess another thing is, are they wearing slides afterwards? That was another thing that one of our podiatrists had talked about is that slides are very, I mean, it's so easy just to slip them on and slip them off, but it's causing more shin splints and causing
Yeah.
more action in your feet. So that's something to also be wary of is don't actually wear your slides, put on a good pair of tennies. And a good pair of
Mhm.
tennies, not ones that are flopping all over the place, one that actually has some around your ankle.
Yeah, unlaced.
Right? You see them running
Yeah,
halfway
I
on
know.
with them. Yeah, and then
I
they're
know.
wondering why they're hurting so bad. Yeah.
Oh,
I and
absolutely.
I think like you're right, like you don't put that into mind. You just think that maybe it was the dancing, I'm just working hard, but it actually is, part of your environment that it can actually really affect you greatly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So with all these different conventions that you've worked with now, how do you find the response has been um, with being there? I'm assuming from the dancers, it's probably great response. But what about at the higher up levels? Because again, to see these changes start to happen, we have to be reaching not just the dancers. So how do you feel like the response has been to offering the service?
I think that the response has been, you might have to cut this, Jenna.
Hey, we said we were going to have hard conversations here.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Whew.
Uh,
How do I answer that one? Um,
maybe less than ideal.
maybe. I think that the response has been not as overwhelming as I would have hoped to be. I think that when you're bringing awareness to more injuries, it's a lot.
Yeah,
So, at the same time, I think that people still don't understand what dance medicine is, like how important it is for dancers to have this kind of care. I still think that we're at the beginning stages of just trying to teach people a little bit more about exactly what Doctors for Dancers is. To have a type of service at a convention, I think is huge. We are working with a collegiate level convention, and the response has been absolutely overwhelming when we've
that's
been over
great.
there. And that has been wonderful, not only from the dancers, now that we've been there for a couple of years, but from the parents, and even the college coaches that are there, the high school coaches that are there. And even the owner has been very well received in what we're doing. They even come over to the booth and get help, which is nice.
That's
And so
amazing.
that has been really nice to know because I think on that collegiate level, they understand the athleticism that they are seeing because they're
Hmm.
rooting for all the other teams. So they really understand like that athlete. It's a little different when I think like the studio and convention side of things. it's still a different disconnect when it comes to like athleticism. But when we're
Yeah.
working with a company called Tribe 99, they are amazing. And so they give us shout outs all week long. And they're on there telling the dancers, drink water, we need you to hydrate. So
That's
that's really nice
amazing.
too, is like they are in there. We even had a talk with the parents. So there's over 250 parents that we were able to get in front of and talk to, which was very interesting because even with the parents, we had asked how many of your dancers are injured, and only a few people had raised their hands. And
Mm.
we're like, right? That
Yeah.
was the face of our PT.
Okay.
Mm, really? But it was really interesting because it was the verbiage that we were using. They were like, well, they're not injured, but maybe they're hurting. And I was like, oh, it was really interesting for parents to come up afterwards. I had one parent go, they're all liars. They're all liars. Everybody's injured here. But then we had
Yeah.
parents come up going, well, I heard you ask that question, but she's not injured. So I think it's important for them to realize that, again, the when they are injured, to listen to them,
Yeah.
because they've probably been injured for a while now. So being able to not only work with the dancers and then work with the college coaches and then now with the parents, it's been very amazing of a cohesiveness. So I'm really excited. Our next stop is going to be Dallas of this year. To do with them, and we'll be on a tour again across the country, providing on-site services to dancers.
That's amazing. I feel like that's the perfect situation of like that's what you want. So
Yeah.
I think yeah, I mean I can see where it's a tough sell for me. Like even as a physical therapist to like I said in the beginning, I've been doing this for 8 years in this town and only now am I finally starting to move the needle,
Yeah.
which is so unfortunate. But at the same time, again, there's hope that like, okay, this can still move in the right direction. But I think, I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on like what you think needs to happen in order to start to see this shift happen where people are a bit more receptive to letting dance medicine specialists into the world?
More education. They have to see it to believe it. I truly feel that. Once they
Yeah.
see you in action and they can see the questions that you're asking them and they can feel that you understand them and that you're not just there to just to be there, you know? I
Hmm.
think that's what's going to move the needle is seeing how special dance medicine really is and seeing the advocates advocate for better conditions for them, and that's what's turning the needle. So part of working with LSU and ASU, and it's just so important for us to be able to provide education um on that. So I think that's what's going to really move the needle is just us constantly knocking down those doors saying, hey, can we come
Yeah.
in and provide this education for you? Yeah.
And I know we're all going to keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just going to keep doing it, screaming it till we're red in the face, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And more people I feel like are reaching out to get classes. Like we just did a 6-week class at a conservatory. Um,
Awesome.
they are there for 10 months living there. Like these are professionals that want to be in the industry. They're from 18 to 24 years old. And we were able to provide education for 6 weeks. So we brought in a
That's
nutritionist,
amazing.
an athletic trainer, PT, a doctor, and we talked about all kinds of things. And they were just so grateful for this information because this is going to be information that is going to be helpful for them for the rest of their lives, for their careers.
Hmm.
So I think that it's happening
Yes.
more and more. And I think the more that we get out there and provide these kind of educational classes, not just the on-site services at conventions, but actually providing like that real education and having the teachers and the studio owners and the parents show up too. It's not just for the dancers, it's for everybody. Um, I don't know a dancer that doesn't have somebody, a caregiver that is helping them do all of these things because the schedule is
Right.
jam-packed. So the parents need to be a part of it. The teachers, the studio owners all need to be a part of the conversation to really help bring in dance medicine so that we can really change the way that people are training people, the technique that is going out there. There's so many things that we can learn from dance medicine specialists to
Yeah.
really help our dancers train like the athletes that they are.
Yeah. Amazing. That's perfect. Well, I think again, we obviously there's lots of changes that we want to see. But what I love is you gave our dancers some really good, like actionable steps that they can start taking right now, even when they're in an environment that is a little bit less than ideal. So thank you for that. I think that was wonderful info for all of our listeners. Can you just go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you? How do they utilize this wonderful service that we have?
Go to doctorsfordancers.com. We're also on Instagram, so we have a lot of great videos that you can view on there. On our website, we even have Jenna's on there for Stop the Pop. We have free educational videos on YouTube that you can check out. And if you're interested in having any of us come into the studio or your convention space, reach out to us. We're at contact@doctorsfordancers.com. We're going to be starting to do some new workshops coming up. So our first one will be with Dr. Lauer. So
Yay.
excited. Woo, woo. So keep a lookout for that. That's going to be coming up in January 2025. So we're going to be starting up some workshops that we feel that are super important for the community to learn more about. So there's all kind of great resources out there for you.
Yeah, and I will link all of this for everybody in the show notes as well, so they can find you nice and easy.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I always love our chats. I think this was hopefully really educational for everybody.
I hope so.
All
Have
right,
a
take
good one.
care.
Thanks.